You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business.
But these aren't your employees. You can't tell them what to do. They're your partners. Now, there's a brand standard that you are collectively trying to withhold, but they are operating their own business. It is their own capital. And of course, they expect a return on that capital. It's just a new relationship for us. So the two answers for me is we had to learn a new business, and then we had to be intentional about what kind of relationship do we want to have. And related to that is we wanted to be intentional about what type of franchisor do we want to be? So I loved going to franchise conferences early on, understanding all of these different franchise companies that are out there. How are they doing things? How are they creating rapport with their franchisee? And then we had to have a lot of internal discussion. Well, what do we want to build? Which was really fun because I haven't built something new in a very long time. And so to be able to take a step back and be inspired by brands like McDonald's. I mean, I could care less about McDonald's until we started franchising. So it's been wonderful to be influenced by some of these wonderful franchise organizations to help us understand, well, what are we trying to build?
My first piece of advice would be align, from a RevOps standpoint, align all of these different verticals, make sure that your data is overlapping when it comes to, we sold the franchise unit for X amount of dollars. What are we looking for on a return there? Are they meeting these metrics over monthly or quarterly basis? Like have those KPI conversations. A lot of the time, again, people bite off more than they can chew. The more that you can direct these folks that are opening the franchise units and give them goals and metrics to meet, the better it's going to be for everyone. You have your standards, you can see how they're tracking against those, and it gives them a goal. It gives them something to work towards. So I think that reporting is a huge, sometimes a misalignment. So when you do utilize your systems, maybe you have reporting on one solution and on the other, and when you're not overlaying that data, you're missing a lot of gaps there. It's really important that everybody has the same goals, you're measuring in the same way, and that you can also review that again, monthly, quarterly, whatever it may be, to see it's the same thing as sales, right? How are you tracking towards these goals? It's almost the end of the year and we have to make up for something. How will we do that, right? Look at your book of business. It's the same idea as what FranDev does to get them in the door that the franchise units then have to do to be producing strongly on their end as well.
First and foremost is the capital. You have to have enough money to franchise. It's a very expensive project. Not only to create the documents and file with different states and get the operations manual, but is to make sure people know about you. Because I've heard the statistics, there are around 4,000 franchises in the United States, with about 1,000 of them leaving every year and new 1,001 coming in. So, and then I think over 70% of franchises in the United States are under 10 units. So there are only few that making past 10, and then even fewer making past 20, and past 100, I think it's just single digit percentage. Capital is number one. Second, you have to have systems that you can duplicate. And third, again, don't try to do everything yourself. Very good example, when I was franchising, I was like, okay, brand manual, instructions how to run the business. My team can do it. I mean, we're running a successful bookkeeping business. Why do I need anybody else? So we sat down and we wrote the manual and we had 30 pages. And I'm like, you know what? I won't be able to sell that as my know-how, just having 30 pages. So I did reluctantly hire the company that specializes in writing a brand manual for franchisor. They went and interviewed all of us. I had to fly to Chicago and spent about 15 to 16 hours one-on-one with their people, literally answering the questions. After it was all said and done, they gave us the product that was over 600 pages long. I'm like, okay, now I can go and sell that as, my know-how and as the value and blueprint for the franchise.
There are lots of multi-unit operators that come in that they see the unit model and they understand it and they feel like they can execute against it and they're confident in it based on talking with existing franchisees. To get family offices or small private equities to come into a brand, you need to be very buttoned up.
Mhm.
In the unit model has to be incredibly figured out. You cannot. There's no guesswork in every area of the business. It has to be well thought out. All the playbooks have to be in place,
Yeah.
and there has to show a trend or consistency. If I open this like a business, I put $100,000 in. I know in 3 years I'm getting paid back, or a year I'm getting paid back. Whatever the payback, the return on investment, those factors have been repeated multiple times over and over again. And then those type of business people will get into the franchisor. Now, average franchisees, which is the everyday person who is thinking of franchising, and they're maybe an executive and they've got this drive and they want to go build something. Those people, they can buy, a market and maybe 3 to 5 territories, and that just gives them that white space to grow. In my opinion, it's always good to have some level of white space, especially if you want to exit the business, because then you have something that the new investor coming in can open that 3rd, 4th, 5th location and be able to get a higher return when they want to get out of the business. White space is good. I will say that a lot of people underestimate. I never push my clients saying, go buy a 10-pack. If you don't have the experience, there's no reason to go do that. There will always be units there if you want to grow into additional units, even if they say they're going to be sold out. Someone at some point got into this and may not like it anymore and will eventually want to get out. And that's an opportunity for you to buy that unit when you're successful. Important to really, 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 really be good at the business and understand the levers that you need to pull as a franchisee to make that business successful. And until you have that team built and are consistently doing that, don't buy more than 3 units. And then most consultants will kill me for saying that because they want to, they want to maximize their return as well. But if you're not able to prove that model out and you go buy 10 units and you get 1 open, what good is that for the franchisor and what good is that for you, the franchisee?
The reality is step 1 is capital. There's so many brands, and it's such a complex thing in franchising. There's so many emerging brands that they come to the table. Some franchise consultant says it costs $100,000 to franchise your business, and they spend $100,000. Like, yes, I'm a franchise. They work through, they have the paperwork, they have an ops manual. And then they're like, okay, now what? And the consultant goes, well, now you got to go spend to market your franchise. And they're like, well, I thought it was going to be $100,000. And so when you really break down what does it cost to get momentum, it is very expensive. The stat is like 87% of first-time franchisors don't sell a franchise in their first 2 years. And so that creates this wide gap of people that are frustrated. I had a client, Big Blue Swim School, and I love this example. Well capitalized, private equity backed. And I said, what's winning? They had like 3 units open. And they said, we want 50 franchise agreements signed next year. I said, 50 off of 3? They go, yeah. I go, $2.5 million in marketing. And they go, done. He's like, look, $2.5 million. If we get 1 deal, we'll get that back in royalty. And so the next thing, capitalization is 1, but 2 is understanding the value of the deal. So many franchisors say, we want to spend $15,000 in marketing per deal, when that deal could be worth a ton. I did an assessment with a brand a few weeks ago, and we looked at their royalty for 3 years, and it was $200,000 that they pull in on average for the first 3 years in royalty. I said, okay, I have a check for $200,000 right now. What would you pay me? And the CEO goes, I'll give you $195,000. I said, great. So you're going to pay me $195,000. But when I tell you that the cost to get a franchisee is going to be somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 in marketing, how you're going to react? He's like, well, that's higher than the industry average. Like, all right, but you're willing to write me the check for $195,000. And so now the capital expectations that are aligned. And the last thing, and I'm oversimplifying this, is that the expectations are aligned. So a lot of brands are trained to sell through item 19, this big fancy number, but first year sales is much different than year 5 in sales. And so if they sell on these big numbers, franchisee gets out of the gate, they didn't, the franchisee is not well capitalized. They might have signed a multi-unit agreement, and then the franchisee stalls out. Expectations were met. They signed a 3-unit deal. They open up 1. They're like, I'm going to pause for a second. Those other 2 don't get open, but they've cannibalized the territory so they don't grow. And same thing is true, expectations and capital for the franchisee. So it's not overly difficult, but too many businesses franchise that do not have good P&Ls without enough capital, without the expectation setting. And then they look around and they blame everything else for why they're not growing, but it's fairly simple math.
Technology is a wrapper around all of that to help accelerate that. It doesn't replace the people. It doesn't fix the mistakes that are already there with the people or the process. So it's really there to accelerate things. And I think that's the big mistake that a lot of people make, is they think they lean into technology. Well, the technology is going to solve the problem. No, the technology is not going to have the discipline and the data and the behaviors that need to happen every day. It may help you accelerate those behaviors, but if you're doing the wrong behaviors today, it's not going to solve that tomorrow.
Align your teams, right? Every team has a purpose. So make sure your FranDev team has that data sending to real estate in order to be successful to find those locations. And after that, make sure marketing has all that detail in order to supply that new franchise unit with the necessary materials or lists of people that maybe are on a wait list or want to join their franchise, be a part of it, whatever that might be. But develop a solution that takes all your verticals into one place, collecting that data and dispersing it where it's needed. That's really, really important.